Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, finally, where I go through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me at the only Patrick Troughton story not to begin with the word "the." I think I've come to the conclusion that Season 5's reputation for being a bit samey isn't as universal as is sometimes made out. Yes, sure, a lot of bases come under siege, enough to be a prevalent theme. But most of the stories in this season actually strive to do something different with that format, or end up doing something different with it just by mistake. And that makes for a season which, while it can't exactly be considered diverse, could be argued to be diverse enough. Then there's The Enemy of the World, which feels quite anomalous, just smack bang in the middle of it. Fury from the Deep, though, may come quite highly rated by a lot of people, but it is, for my money, easily the most glaring example so far of this season's reputation. Again, base under siege, but not only that. Frolicking on the beach right at the start of episode 1, someone in their midst being a puppet of the alien menace, and is the foam really so much different from the web in the most recent story? And this used to stand in my way of connecting with this story. On the last marathon, I remember reacting quite strongly, going, what were they thinking? I know the beach thing might be stretching it a little bit, but it hasn't really been that long since the TARDIS arrived on the beach and the Doctor started frolicking. And it's cosmetic differences like this that are actually more important than the teams seem to realise. Because we just end up with the prevailing sense of, oh, again? Really though? Oh. But at least it's only 4 episodes this time, right? Oh. The crew show up, get captured, meet somebody in charge who won't listen to them, get locked up by that someone who won't listen to them, and then have to convince them of the terror they're facing. Even Jamie points out how repetitive this all is. Now, at the end of this story, Victoria's going to depart, basically because she's tired of being in danger all of the time, but I really wouldn't hold it against her if she left because she's just disorientated by debilitating deja vu. Robson isn't just very similar to Clent before he becomes the latest to fall under the malevolent spell of the weed. In the first episode alone, he says,
"When I need your advice, I'll ask for it."
Not once, but twice. The sense of repetition isn't just in relation to previous characters from previous stories, though that would be enough license to criticise, I think. No, it happens within the confines of this story itself, before the first episode is even over. And this doesn't feel like it's good writing, which is letting us know what the characters are about. At points, it feels like writing by numbers and then repeating the numbers. Because he even says another version of it in episode 2. And if anything carries this story, I feel like it's the performances rather than the writing. Like, for example, the reason the cliffhanger to episode 2 works as well as it does is because John Abernethy is so good at delivering that really portentous statement.
It's down there. In the darkness, in the pipeline, waiting.
And if he hadn't delivered that so well, the line probably wouldn't be strong enough to finish the episode on. So, it sounds like I'm one of the few people that doesn't like Fury from the Deep, right? Yet, I watched Fury from the Deep this time, and perhaps this is enhanced by the animation, which wasn't around the last time I marathoned. And I still think all of this is true, except this time, I just get drawn into the atmosphere of it. It is perhaps the most atmospheric story in the season so far. It really wasn't fun for me not enjoying this story on previous viewings, not just because I didn't enjoy it, but because I also know that Fury from the Deep happens to be quite highly regarded. So as well as feeling like I was being held hostage by a story I didn't really enjoy, I was also feeling like I was held hostage by its reputation. Fury from the Deep is said to have made foam scary, and I feel like that's another area where this story falls short. Apart from feeling like a retread of the web from the Web of Fear, foam just isn't scary. And I do still feel like that, except on this viewing I realise it isn't the foam that's scary, it's that completely evocative atmosphere. Now, what I got from this viewing was that this might be the most successful Doctor Who story in overcoming any shortcomings it may have through the sheer force of just building dread. A snippet exists of Van Lutyens getting dragged down into it, and while I know I'm meant to be scared, it's not a terribly brilliant effect. I can't help but think it looks like he's slinking down into a relaxing bath. I mean, I understand completely why Victoria screams at it the way she does, because I used to dread foam parties too. But the film itself isn't exactly scary, is it? No, it isn't, is the correct answer. And what that means is that Victoria, who has proven herself to be a bloody good companion up to this point, she's strong-minded, strong-willed, the fact that she screams at it, probably more than anything she's screamed at yet, doesn't ring true to me. Except on this viewing, I buy completely why she would feel so frightened in this one. It's a cold, remote, unforgiving place. They're trapped there, also with somebody in authority who just is not willing to listen to them. Now, admittedly, that is an archetype of this season, but it makes it feel so more starkly cold. And because the ambience of this one is so much one of unease and creeping terror, I am far more on board with Victoria feeling frightened than I've ever been before watching her. And I used to think that that was her only character trait. Years and years and years and years and years and years and years ago, before I wised up and realised that Victoria's pretty damn good, I used to think that she was just a dreadful archetype of a consistently scared companion. And it used to annoy me. And when I came round to Victoria, Fury from the Deep used to annoy me because, I felt like she fell back into that archetype. This time, though, on this viewing, I totally buy it. The atmosphere just sells it for me, and I get why she would feel so frightened in this one, even if I can't quite see the foam being that terrifying myself. And why she needs to scream that much, of course, is because it turns out to be noise which defeats the weed. And while I suppose then you could argue that Victoria saves the day, it is by accident. And in a hangover from previous disdain to this story that I just can't seem to shake, she does kind of almost get turned into a shell of her former self in order to do so. She's been built up so well over the course of this season, and then she ends up having to be helplessly screamy for a convenient plot point. And that's still not something I'm massively keen on, to be honest. She's even sent back to the bunk room solely to be put into danger for that first cliffhanger. And even though I did definitely enjoy this story far more than I ever have before, I still might have put 2 thumbs down and blown a raspberry at the screen. At that sole thing of having to reduce Victoria. But it's not like I've never been able to see good stuff in Fury. I mean, as nice as it is to see it make its first appearance, I don't think the Doctor's sonic screwdriver really counts. But Oak and Quill. Guys, Oak and Quill. This story's defining image is probably their attack on Maggie Harris, and I've got to say, that's for good reason. The foam may not hit the spot, but this scene is genuinely frightening, and it isn't really anything to do with direction or scripting, it's down to the performance. Mr. Quill's bulging eyes and own look of fear as he conducts the attack is most unsettling, and the pair's arrival into the story is a much needed boost. They are brilliantly sinister, and they definitely pique the curiosity. When Oak smiles at the seaweed growing on him, it is compellingly creepy. There are reasons to keep watching for sure, and they make for a far more successful recurring threat than the weed itself does. Maggie Harris walking into the sea has always been another highlight, and it's not because I dislike her in any way, far from it. It's stark, it's bold, it's striking. That it's so coldly and matter-of-factly executed makes for another scary image, and I used to wonder if this story was just a couple of occasionally great flourishes peppering a very dull rehash. Now though, I realise it's precisely this flair which is what creates that atmosphere, which is what makes this story work as well as it does. Now, I'm not saying I've fully come round to the writing on this one, and I'm not even going to start arguing that it's enough of a departure from the Season 5 template. But previously, I've never ever been taken in by this story's sort of atmosphere. This time though, I 100% was. And it's just such a good atmosphere that I'm able to let go of the hang-ups I had about this story and just enjoy it. And I think this was the first time I enjoyed Fury from the Deep. And not only was that a pleasant viewing experience, it just felt so liberating. It was like an epiphany. I realised, I get it. Megan Jones is a very good character, and it's really nice to see another strong woman, and this time in such a position of authority. Robson emerging from the foam at the end of episode 5 is an excellent cliffhanger. Can you tell I enjoyed it this time? Because time was, I would lose patience with this story very early on and find it incredibly difficult to get it back. And I am so glad that that is no longer the case. And the regulars obviously turn out very good work again. Now, the Doctor starting the phone fight might feel a little bit too similar to his paddle in The Enemy of the World, but he just does it so well. And this TARDIS team, despite what Victoria is going to come to realise, really is all about the fun. And when the Doctor later gets excited about flying a helicopter, it's another opportunity for the Doctor's sort of like childish, fun, mischievous side to come to the fore. And that's an opportunity I'm always so glad to see Troughton take. Then there is two companions who arguably end up having more important roles in Fury from the Deep. Early on, Jamie and Victoria have a lovely scene where they compete to see who can escape the fastest. And I think that's just brilliant because it highlights what a real bond the two actors have managed to convey the characters as having. And it remains prominent throughout the story, especially as Victoria inches closer and closer to her decision to cease her travels with them. When she admits to him that she's feeling the strain of the constant peril, it's kind of refreshing to see it addressed. And Watling does it really well because she sells it as a legitimate concern rather than Victoria being like a scaredy cat or a little bit pathetic, which it so easily could have come across like. And while we're on the subject, it's really nice to see this level of foreshadowing given to a companion's departure. And it's the first time I can think of in the show that a companion has been given such a thorough and thoughtful farewell. Yeah, okay, Susan's has got all of the emotion of the Doctor saying goodbye to his granddaughter, but I mean, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Here, it starts as like quite early on in the story that you realise, you know, Victoria's thinking this. When she eventually makes her decision at the end, it's not that it comes as no surprise, it's that it was sewed into the fabric of the story. Quite a large chunk of episode 6 is handed over to Victoria deciding to stay here on Earth, and I wholeheartedly approve. Like I said, I never used to like Victoria at all, and the last marathon did change that. Now though, I have come to adore her, and it's really heartening seeing this much care given to her leaving the show. Obviously, I would prefer it if she didn't go at all. I think her dynamic with the Doctor, and especially Jamie, has been absolutely outstanding. Now, when I talk about care given to her departure, I'm not just talking on the part of the production team, because I'm also saying that because the Doctor himself is incredibly thoughtful when he handling her decision to say goodbye. It harkens right back to the end of The Evil of the Daleks, where he announces that he's going to take her with them. He's had a duty of care to her all this time, and now that she's found somewhere she wants to stay, it has to be her decision. And the fact that he does give her a chance to change her mind is just absolutely wonderful. It's all quite affecting, actually. And Jamie is devastated by it, and that's quite palpable. It feels like a friend is leaving rather than just our character, rather than just the latest companion to leave. It feels like the show is losing a friend. Bye-bye, Victoria. I used to have you so very wrong. The marathon has just ticked off 203 episodes, and I have to say I wasn't super stoked to reach this one, but finally I found a way in, and I am so glad that I did, because I came out of this story not just enjoying it more than I ever have before, but actually finally properly enjoying it at all. Only one more story until we finish season 5 and forge ahead into Patrick Troughton's final one. The animations of seasons 4 and 5 have certainly made Troughton's era easier to get on with, just in terms of a fluid viewing experience. I still think I would prefer recons over the animations, but I also have to consider if it's a coincidence that I enjoy more of these stories now because I finally watched the animations. It may not be entirely unrelated, and also there are some really fun Easter eggs here that some might find sacrilegious. The images of Delgado's master, for example, I actually find quite a fun inclusion. And also, like I said, by a more fluid viewing experience, the marathon becomes less static with the animations, and it's that staticness that I know puts a lot of people off the recons. Whether or not it's the animations that are allowing me to enjoy this era more than the last time, I only have 11 missing episodes left, and 2 of those are animated, so that is 9 recons to go. I think it might be a tie. Either Oakenquill's attack on Maggie, or Victoria and Jamie saying goodbye to each other. Out of all of the companions so far, and I'm including Ian and Barbara in this, I feel like it's Jamie and Victoria that had the most believable and touching friendship. Foam just isn't scary, and there's a lot of foam. And stuff from other stories. Enjoying this story more than I have done before doesn't mean I stop noticing that. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you had a gasp with this video, then you know how YouTube works. Please do hit the like thumb and share it around. I would be super grateful. And what do you think of Fury from the Deep? Is it the best proponent of the Season 5 checklist, or is it the most derivative? And is Victoria's departure easily one of the most lovingly handled yet, or is it utterly bungled? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for Season 5's final story. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll see you on the wheel.